And this is the guy that I think is the most interesting player, not at the position in the draft. Dan talked early on about his rushing ability, said he thought he was a better rusher in some ways than Lamar Jackson. Draft capital is going to matter so much to this player, Dan, but I'd like to, we're going to be a little bit quicker moving forward. We're past kind of the consensus top two. Just talk about Jalen Milroe, the passer, and if there's any hope there.
Yeah, there is hope there. I mean, he took a major step, in my opinion, moving forward from 2023 to 2024. Completed 65% of his passes against the SEC. Sure, I don't love to use completion percentage as a be-all, end-all stat, but when you watch the tape, you can see him operating different types of concepts, in breakers, out breakers, where you could watch him actually progress through the read. It doesn't happen that often. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he is a multi-read quarterback. Right now, there is a lot of one read on his tape, and there is a lot of things that confuse him. I see him get confused by hot pressure, not understanding where his hot read is, blitzes coming from angles where he's not projecting it to come from, and he does look to find solutions with his legs. He has a long way to go as a processor and as a passer. Right now, I think he is inaccurate when it comes to the short stuff and the short to intermediate stuff. Actually, in the vertical game, I think he's one of the more accurate deep ball passers in this class. And the numbers back that up, specifically on 40-plus air yard throws, where he was very, very good. And that's an aspect of his game that's interesting. What does this all sound like to me, Heath? And I'm not comparing these two players, but what does this all sound like? It sounds a lot like Jalen Hurts. It really does.
I was, I'm going to ask Dave about two other player comps, but Hurts is someone who you have been skeptical of really since he entered the league. And I think still you would probably agree with the fact that you don't actually like the aesthetic of the way he plays the quarterback position or the Eagles offense. But could he, if he gets into that type of situation, could he be successful?
Yes, and that's the be all. Like when you say it like that, Heath, it's so hard for me to project him getting into that type of situation, right? The best offensive line in the NFL, the best offensive line coach, 2 elite receivers, and the best running back in football. Like that's crazy to think about him joining a system like that, but it leads me to believe that the draft capital won't be the be-all, end-all when it comes to Milroe, because Jalen Hurts didn't have great draft capital, second-round draft pick. They didn't trade up for him or anything like that, unless I'm forgetting. So it's not impossible for Milroe. I actually think that Milroe has some aspects of his game that are better as a passer than Jalen Hurts. I think he drives the football better on the outbreaking throws in intermediate range. He drives the ball a little too much in the short game, and I think that leads to a lot of inaccurate throws. And I think he's not as good a deep ball passer as Hurts, because I will give Hurts credit. I think he's a great deep ball thrower. I think he puts great touch and trajectory, but he's a good deep ball thrower. And honestly, I know it sounds crazy, but he's a better runner than Jalen Hurts. He's a better runner than so many guys. Right. You watch his tape, and it's phenomenal as a runner. Like, I think he could be one of the better running backs in this class if that was his position. Like, if they just converted him.
Wow. Dan Schneier says Jalen Milroe should play running back.
No, I'm not saying that. Please don't put me
Dave,
in that camp.
We talked about Jalen Hurts, but I think that the two guys that people rightly or wrongly are going to be thinking about when they hear Jalen Milroe could be the best running back, well, a great running back, but we've got some concerns about him as a passer, are two guys who are just hanging on by their fingertips to starting quarterback jobs in the NFL, Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson. Dave, I wonder, how would you compare what you've seen from Milroe to Fields and Richardson?
I think he's got the potential to be a better thrower than both of them. And I like the fact that Milroe has more experience than Richardson had when Richardson came out. And I think that I think this comes down to whether or not he can find a guy like Josh Allen found, like Jalen Hurts found, like Anthony Richardson is trying to find this offseason, that can improve his processing and improve his accuracy in those short to intermediate areas. The deep ball throws are fun. You watch the highlights of him, and he's amazing. And the rushing is amazing. And that's what makes fantasy managers salivate all over their keyboards or phones or whatever's right under your mouth when you're reading or watching Milroe. There are two huge ifs, Heath. Number one, if the measurements at the combine are accurate compared to the measurements at the Senior Bowl, especially when it comes to his hand, that's a good thing. Two, if he can process. I talked to an NFL executive who just, when I brought up Milroe's name, he just shook his head and looked at me and he said, can't process. And I don't know if that means that executive is just, dropping Milroe to round 4 of his draft, saying this dude can't process and you can't win with him because of it, or if it just means that he's a project coming in. And so would it shock me if he follows the same type of trajectory of Jalen Hurts, where Hurts was kind of a gadget player for much of the year?
I am sorry, Dave, but I'm going to have to cut you off again. It's
Mike,
is it my audio or am I just yapping too much?
You're just coming
technical
out.
difficulties.
Your audio is going in and out. We can't hear you.
Dan, I wonder, like Dave talked about the fact that some executives may see that processing as a reason to drop Milroe even further. I've kind of been assuming around 2 draft capital, but do you think there's any possibility that the opposite happens and somebody says, you know what, I see the upside that Jalen Milroe has. Could he sneak into the first round so somebody gets that 5th-year option if they end up winning it?
Yes, I 100% think that is a scenario that's in play. I don't think that's what will play out, but I think it is in play. And I want to make it clear why I am more excited about a player like this for Dynasty. Let's just look at it 30,000 foot view for a second, Heath, right? We just compared Sanders and Milroe. Sanders has a much better chance, I think, of starting more games in the NFL than Milroe. But what does that get you in Dynasty, in fantasy football?
Well, it depends. I mean, isn't it ultimately a super flex versus 1 QB conversation? Like it's much more likely, I think, that Shedeur Sanders is going to be a top 24 fantasy quarterback, maybe even multiple seasons of top 24 play than Milroe. But I think Milroe's infinitely more likely to have top 12 seasons.
Right. And I'm not sold that Sanders has that upside of having multiple top 24 seasons. I'm not sure how long his leash will actually be, no matter what the draft capital is, though I don't think it's going to be that high because he may not work in the NFL. This is kind of goes back to my zero-sum game at quarterback. I think you either work or you don't work. And I personally think there might only be one quarterback who works in this class. So if I'm operating under that assumption, Heath, why would I not make a play for Milroe over Sanders or any of these types of quarterbacks, Howard, whatever it may be, even if they're not quite there as a processor yet? What they're offering me from a fantasy standpoint is not nearly enough to overcome the upside of what Milroe can offer, but not just the upside. To me, it's the floor. Like I don't see a floor with Sanders and a lot of these guys. That's the biggest difference for me, I think, at quarterback in my evaluation for Dynasty as quarterbacks come into the NFL. I don't see the supposed floor because I'm not so sure how long you can last as an NFL quarterback. You either have it or you don't.
Well, I think the floor would obviously come from him being a top 3 pick. If he's a top 3 pick and Jalen Milroe gets drafted in the middle of round 2, then there's a significant chance that Jalen Milroe never goes into a week 1 as a starter for his own team. And Shedeur's likely as a top 3 pick to get 2 seasons. I mean, we saw how bad Bryce Young was his rookie year. He still got a second year. He was terrible, got benched for Andy Dalton, and they went back to him again. So
but let's look at it like this, Heath, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to make my point clear because I don't think I did a good job of it. So let's say you get that, right? Like he's drafted early, which I don't think he will be. Let's say he will be, and you get that. I still think going into any dynasty season, you can get the Gardner Minshew or whoever is that veteran quarterback making starts for very cheap on your dynasty team. And you're getting the same thing you're going to get from somebody like Sanders who can't run, doesn't have an explosive arm, right? All these different things. And so you're not paying capital to get the Gardner Minshew or whatever. So why do I care about getting the Sanders or whoever it may be in that regard?